Pitcairn Island exposed. 47 residents, no police, and shocking sex laws.
Pitcairn Island, a place with only 47 residents, no police, and a set of laws that would shock the world. This is not a place you'll find in your average travel guide, and it's not a place most people would ever think to visit. But today, we were exposing the truth about this mysterious island that is hiding shocking secrets beneath its peaceful exterior. It is so isolated that you probably won't find it unless you race specifically looking for it. It sits about 3,000 miles from New Zealand, and it is far enough off the beaten path that it is one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. While this island might look peaceful, its story is anything but. They built homes, cultivated crops, and adapted to their new life. However, the mutineers weren't alone for long. They brought several Tahitian men and women with them to the island to help with the settlement, and this would prove to be both a blessing and a curse. As time passed, the island's small population became entwined in complex relationships, and the isolated lifestyle began to have its own challenges. The initial sense of freedom slowly began to unravel as tensions rose within the community. There are no roads, no shops, and no police force. The island operates almost entirely independently, but its history is far from idealistic. Pitcairn Island is a place where mutiny, exile, and survival are written into its very fabric. And while the island today is home to a small but resilient population, its past still holds many mysteries and untold stories. There is something incredibly fascinating about a place that has maintained its own way of life for so long. From their daily routines to the secrets that linger in their legal system, Pitcairn's history isn't just a story of the past, it is still shaping the community today. The people of Pitcairn Island are survivors, holding onto the legacy of their ancestors and continuing to live in one of the most remote and isolated communities on Earth. Pitcairn has a fascinating history, tied to mutiny, exile, and a community that has survived on its own for over 100 years. The harsh realities of island life, combined with internal disputes and problems within the small community, led to a tragic decline in the number of people living there. The mutineers and their companions, who once had high hopes of escaping their past, were now facing their own version of survival. Life on Pitcairn became increasingly difficult. Without proper supplies or external help, they were left to rely solely on the island's resources, which were limited. The once vibrant group of sailors and Tahitians, who had hoped to live in peace, now found themselves battling isolation, disease, and a growing sense of despair. In fact, it is so remote that it is often considered one of the least accessible territories in the world. Many of the mutineers died of disease, conflict, and even murder. The island, which had once seemed like a safe haven from the British Navy, became a place of sorrow for the remaining residents. The mutineers' dream of living freely and peacefully was shattered as they faced the harsh realities of isolation. But still, despite all the hardships, the survivors on Pitcairn continued to carry on, holding on to a small but enduring hope. It's almost like an island lost in time, where history and isolation blend together in an extraordinary way. Today, their descendants still live on this isolated island. The island's history and its ties to the bounty mutineers remain an important part of the island's identity. These descendants have inherited not just the land, but also the stories of their ancestors. Their community, despite its small size, continues to live on, and the island's isolation and history have shaped the culture and lifestyle of the people who call it home. The mysterious origins of Pitcairn Island, the Bounty, a British Royal Navy ship, was captained by William Bligh, a man who was known for his harsh leadership. Bligh's management style pushed the crew to the brink of rebellion, and in April of 1789, Fletcher Christian, the ship's first mate, led a mutiny that overthrew Captain Bligh. After the mutiny, the crew set Bligh and his loyalists adrift in a small boat. But what happened next would forever change the fate of these men. Pitcairn Island is a small, remote piece of land in the South Pacific, Pitcairn Island's history begins with the infamous mutiny of the HMS Bounty in 1789. With Captain Bligh gone, Christian and the mutineers needed to find a place to hide. They feared retribution from the British Navy, so they sought refuge on an isolated island where they would be out of reach. Pitcairn Island, discovered in 1767 by British explorer Philip Carteret, seemed to be the perfect place. It was remote, nearly impossible to find without detailed knowledge of the South Pacific, and it was far enough from the British colonies that they wouldn't be tracked down. In 1790, after months of sailing, the mutineers landed on Pitcairn, hoping to start a new life far away from their past. When they arrived, the island was uninhabited, and the mutineers quickly began to settle down. Over time, the population of the island dwindled. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Pitcairn's population had dramatically decreased. The original mutineers were the ancestors of the current population of Pitcairn Island. Over the years, the island's ties to the outside world have become even more distant, and it remains a place far removed from modern society. Pitcairn may seem like a paradise to some untouched by modern society, a place where life moves slowly and people are free from the pressures of the outside world. In the next sections, we'll dive deeper into the present-day life of Pitcairn Island, uncovering how the islanders have continued their way of life despite being so isolated. The Pitcairn population, a community of 47 Pitcairn Island, is home to one of the smallest populations in the world, with just 47 residents as of the latest count. This tiny population is a direct result of the island's remote location, but it also defines the unique way of life on Pitcairn. There are no large cities, no bustling streets, and no distractions from modern life. The 47 people who call this island home live in a world where isolation is both a blessing and a challenge. In a way, Pitcairn is frozen in time. In larger societies, people can go about their lives without everyone knowing their business. For many residents, the community's closeness creates a sense of belonging that's difficult to find elsewhere. The small size of the population allows for deep relationships to form, and people often work together to solve problems. It's a way of life that relies heavily on cooperation and shared goals. In a place where there is no police force and very few outside influences, the islanders have no choice but to work together to keep things running smoothly. It can feel like there are no escapes from the pressures of community life, and the challenges of maintaining relationships in such a tight-knit environment are unique. The same things that bring the community together can also be the source of stress and frustration. Living on Pitcairn requires a special kind of resilience, and the people who choose to live there must have a deep commitment to the island and the way of life it represents. But on Pitcairn, it's almost impossible to avoid being a part of every conversation. The people of Pitcairn must work together, rely on one another, and face challenges that most people will never experience. Yet, it's this very way of life that gives Pitcairn its unique charm and character. The community is small, but its sense of identity and purpose is larger than many places with far bigger populations. The islanders of Pitcairn are not just surviving, they're living in a way that few others ever could. The residents have limited access to resources and supplies, and they can only rely on what they can produce themselves or what they manage to import through the occasional supply ship. This means that everything from food to tools must be carefully maintained, and there's very little room for waste. It has no police force, no government, and no military presence. This means that the island S-47 residents are completely responsible for their own governance and the maintenance of peace and order. There are no external authorities to turn to in times of trouble. So, how does this small and isolated community manage to keep everything running smoothly without the usual support systems we take for granted? Many residents feel a strong connection to the island's history and its unique culture. The sense of isolation that might feel like a burden to some actually serves as a unifying force. For the people of Pitcairn, they are proud of their heritage and the fact that they continue to survive in such a remote and difficult place. The island's small population fosters a sense of responsibility that binds the residents together. In a way, everyone is connected by the shared goal of preserving their way of life and ensuring the survival of the community for generations to come. Living on Pitcairn requires resourcefulness, and the people who live there have developed a way of life that focuses on self-sufficiency and sustainability. Everyone knows each other's families, histories, and personal lives. There are few opportunities for young people to leave the island for education or work. So many of the younger generation remain on Pitcairn for their entire lives. This has led to a cycle where the island's population is aging, and the younger generation is choosing to leave the island in search of more opportunities. This can create a sense of uncertainty about the future, as fewer people are willing to stay on the island, and the pressure of maintaining a living community weighs heavily on those who remain. While this can create a strong sense of camaraderie and connection, it can also bring about tension. Disagreements are harder to keep private, and everyone's actions have a greater impact on the community as a whole. There is no rush of city life, no constant movement, and no overwhelming influence from the outside world. Yet, this very isolation shapes everything about the way the residents live. Living with such a small group means that everyone knows everyone, and their sense of community is incredibly close-knit. Whether it's farming, fishing, or even just getting through daily life, each person plays a crucial role in ensuring the survival of the community. This tight-knit structure means that the islanders are bound by strong ties of mutual reliance. There's a sense of unity that's rare. In the modern world, where many people live in large cities surrounded by strangers, but on Pitcairn, where the community is so small, no one is a stranger. Everyone has a hand in maintaining the island's way of life. It's a place where relationships are forged through necessity as much as through choice, and the small number of people creates a shared experience that's hard to find anywhere else. Living on Pitcairn Island is unlike living anywhere else on Earth. The islanders depend on one another for almost everything. However, living in such a small community also means that the usual boundaries of privacy and personal space are often blurred. This lack of personal space and privacy isn't always a negative thing, though life on Pitcairn can be tough, especially because of the island's isolation. Because of the island's small size, the community is also affected by a unique set of challenges. Despite these challenges, there's a deep sense of pride in the community. However, living in such a small and isolated place can also be emotionally difficult. In the end, life on Pitcairn is a constant balancing act between the rewards and the struggles of living in such a small, isolated community. The island's absence of police Pitcairn Island is unlike any place you'd expect to find in the modern world. The answer lies in self-regulation. The islanders take care of their own disputes, solve their own problems, and handle any issues that arise within the community without relying on a formal justice system. People are expected to work together, and conflicts are often resolved through discussions or mediation by the island's elders or respected members. In theory, this system fosters a strong sense of unity, as everyone is expected to act in the best interests of the community. The residents rely heavily on each other to maintain the peace, and this interdependence is central to life on Pitcairn. This included holding a trial within the community itself, which ultimately resulted in the conviction of several islanders. This led to changes in how the island's legal and governance systems were handled. External legal assistance was brought in, and certain structures of governance were altered to ensure better protection against crime and to bring the island's system in line with international standards. However, the islanders' ability to manage their own affairs remained intact, and self-regulation continued to be a key part of their way of life. Without police and without the usual structures of law and order, the island's system of governance works in some ways, but it is not without its flaws. The question of how long this unique system can continue to function without external support remains unanswered. In fact, the rules of society on Pitcairn Island have been shaped largely by the personal beliefs of a small group of people. These laws have evolved over time, but many are still influenced by the island's unique and isolated history. For centuries, the island's legal and moral codes, particularly when it comes to relationships and sexual conduct, have been based on traditions passed down from the mutineers who first settled there. Because of this, some of Pitcairn's laws might seem shocking, even disturbing. to outsiders, but for the people of Pitcairn. These laws have been a part of their way of life for generations. As Pitcairn Island continues to evolve, the challenges of living without police or a formal government may shape the future of this isolated community in ways we can't yet predict. The trial sent shockwaves through the small population and sparked international concern. The absence of police means that much of the responsibility for maintaining peace and order still lies on the shoulders of the islanders themselves. The community is expected to deal with conflicts, disputes, and even criminal activity without the help of an outside authority. Early on in the island's history, after the Mutineers arrived, the community was incredibly small and isolated. Over time, this small population started to intermarry, and in some cases, incestuous relationships between consenting adults were not just accepted, they were tolerated or overlooked. This might sound unbelievable to most people, but in the context of a tiny, isolated community where everyone was connected by blood and history, the islanders saw this as a practical way to keep the population going. While this works in some cases, it doesn't always offer the kind of protection that more developed societies can provide. In a small community where everyone knows each other, there's a fine line between justice and personal bias, and decisions made by the community leaders can sometimes be influenced by personal relationships and reputations. While the case led to some legal reforms and external oversight, it also highlighted the dangers of operating without a formal justice system. It's part of the culture and history of Pitcairn Island, where everyone is interconnected and responsible for one another. But as the island continues to face challenges, particularly with a shrinking population and the arrival of external influences, it is becoming clear that the lack of a formal policing system may not be sustainable in the long term. The island's reputation, already fragile due to its isolation, suffered as a result of this scandal. This might sound like an idealistic way of living, a place where people govern themselves without the need for outside interference. On the surface, this might seem peaceful and harmonious, but in reality, it is far from simple. For a place so small and isolated, Pitcairn has seen its fair share of controversy. In fact, one of the most shocking incidents to occur in the island's history was the 2004 trial of several residents for sexual abuse crimes. The trial, which involved members of the island's community, revealed just how fragile a system of self-governance can be when the trust that holds it together is broken. The scandal exposed the limits of Pitcairn's informal justice system and raised questions about the island's ability to effectively manage crime. Living without police forces means that Pitcairn operates with a system that is built entirely on trust, cooperation, and the willingness of its residents to solve problems within their own community. However, as with any system, challenges do arise. While the island may seem idyllic on the surface, living without formal policing does bring its own problems. In an ideal world, self-regulation can work well, especially in a close-knit community like Pitcairn, where people know each other intimately. But without a formal authority to enforce laws, conflicts can become complicated, and sometimes the community's ability to maintain peace is put to the test. Over the years, Pitcairn's system of self-regulation has been challenged by several issues, one of the most significant being a history of scandal and crime. Without police or a judicial system, the community had to rely on its own resources to handle such a serious issue. In the aftermath of the trial, Pitcairn's leadership, which had previously been responsible for managing disputes, came under intense scrutiny. Despite these reforms, the question remains, how well does this system work in practice? For many of the island's residents, this self-regulated system is the way they've always known life to be. So, while the residents of Pitcairn Island continue to rely on self-regulation and community-driven justice, the limits of this system are becoming more evident. The shocking laws of Pitcairn Island. Pitcairn Island is a place where the laws are very different from what most people are used to. One of the most controversial aspects of Pitcairn's legal system has been its tolerance of incestuous relationships. While these practices may have made sense in the context of the time, they are deeply troubling by modern standards. For many years, the laws surrounding incest on Pitcairn were either vague or lenient, allowing relationships that would be considered illegal or morally unacceptable in most parts of the world. Over time, however, as the island's population grew and the influence of the outside world began to seep in, these laws started to change. In the late 20th century, there was increasing pressure to update the legal system on Pitcairn, especially regarding incest and other moral issues. Pitcairn's past of isolated living and the legacy of its original mutineers still have a profound effect on how the islanders view certain aspects of their society. The way the laws once permitted incest and relationships between close family members may be gone, but the memories of that era remain. These laws have shaped Pitcairn's identity, and the island's journey from isolation to modernity has been a slow and painful process. The island's population, once so small that relationships within families were a matter of survival, gradually moved toward adopting laws that align more closely with global norms. Several men from the island were convicted of sexual abuse against minors. The island's small population and its isolated nature meant that legal matters were often handled within the community. However, as the sexual abuse trial unfolded, it became clear that the island's informal justice system had serious flaws. Many of the accused were powerful members of the community, and some people on the island had turned a blind eye to the abuse for years. The trial exposed deep divisions within the island, as some residents supported the accused while others felt betrayed by the way the community had protected them for so long. The abuse, which had been occurring for years, shattered the image of Pitcairn as a peaceful, secluded paradise. It also raised questions about how a small society with no formal legal system could handle such serious issues. The trial and subsequent conviction of these men brought to light dark secrets about the island's past and its legal system. With no police force, no proper courts, and no functioning legal system, the island had to rely on its own resources to deal with the accusations. The trial was held in a makeshift courtroom on the island, but the proceedings were conducted with the help of British authorities. The UK government stepped in to oversee the trial and ensure that it followed international legal standards. This was a significant shift for Pitcairn, as it marked the first time that an outside authority had played such an active role in the island's legal matters. The trial was a turning point, revealing the weaknesses in the island's system and the necessity for legal reform. What was once a close-knit community suddenly found itself under intense scrutiny from the outside world. This scandal not only affected the reputation of Pitcairn, but also forced the islanders to confront uncomfortable truths about their history, their justice system, and their way of life. The trial was an international shock, and the emotional impact of the case reverberated across the island and beyond. For many, it was hard to believe that something so tragic could happen on such a small and isolated island, where everyone seemed to know everyone else. It's a part of their history that many would rather forget, but it remains a shadow over the community. The isolation of the island, its small population, and the influence of its original mutineers all contributed to a set of laws that allowed practices like incest to be tolerated for many years. While these laws have been changed in recent decades to reflect modern standards, the legacy of these laws continues to affect the island's residents today. Pitcairn's journey from a lawless, isolated paradise to a place governed by international norms has been long and complicated, and its past still impacts the way the island operates today. Even as the island works to integrate more formal legal practices, the scars of its past are still present. The island has had to adapt to changing views on morality and justice, but it hasn't been easy. The challenge for Pitcairn now is finding a balance between its rich, unique cultural history and the need to conform to modern laws that protect the rights and well-being of everyone. Despite these changes, the legacy of these controversial laws still affects Pitcairn today. The island's history of incest and its tolerance of relationships that most would find shocking has had a lasting impact on the community. As a British overseas territory, Pitcairn has also had to adopt some of the laws from the United Kingdom, especially as it faced greater scrutiny from the outside world. In the early 2000s, after the infamous sexual abuse trial, the island's laws came under even more intense review. The trial and the resulting legal reforms were a significant turning point for Pitcairn, as they highlighted the need for more structured, universally accepted laws to protect the residents. As a result, many of the more controversial practices from the past were outlawed, and the island's legal framework was updated to reflect international standards. It's not just about what happened in the past. It's about how the islanders view themselves and their laws. The people of Pitcairn have had to come to terms with the dark aspects of their history, including these questionable legal practices, and adapt as best as they could. But the cultural shift has been slow, and it is clear that the legacy of these old laws still lingers, even though they are no longer legally accepted or allowed. Over the years, Pitcairn's legal system has been gradually modernized, with more formal laws put in place to reflect contemporary values. However, even with these changes, the island's unique cultural history is not easily erased. For the residents of Pitcairn today, the old laws are something they have to live with, even if they no longer apply. In conclusion, the legal system on Pitcairn Island has been shaped by a unique set of circumstances. The 2004 sexual abuse scandal in 2004. Pitcairn Island became the center of a scandal that shocked the world. Before the scandal, Pitcairn had lived under a system of self-regulation. The trial also brought attention to Pitcairn's legal system, or lack thereof. In the aftermath of the scandal, Pitcairn's laws and governance system underwent a complete overhaul. The international outcry following the trial put tremendous pressure on the island to change. The island had long prided itself on its self-regulation and sense of community. But the trial made it clear that these ideals were not enough to protect vulnerable individuals from harm. Pitcairn Island, once seen as a remote paradise, became known worldwide for the abuse scandal that rocked it to its core. The negative attention was hard to shake, and the island's history of incestuous relationships and sexual abuse became a dark chapter in its story. It revealed the flaws in the island's legal system and forced the community to confront difficult truths about its history and its culture. The scandal's impact on the island's reputation and the changes that followed continue to shape Pitcairn today. This island, which has lived in isolation for so long, is now at a crossroads. The residents of Pitcairn are torn between holding on to the customs and ways of life passed down from the first settlers and adapting to the outside world, which is changing rapidly. There are no large cities, no modern conveniences, and very little contact with the outside world. They value the traditions passed down from the island's original settlers, and they feel that the culture and lifestyle of Pitcairn should be protected. As the island becomes less appealing to younger generations, fewer people are choosing to stay. The population continues to decline, and the once thriving community is slowly fading away. For a place that was once home to a group of mutineers who had to start a new life, the idea of a disappearing population is a sad turn of events. The reality is that as the older generation ages and passes away, there may not be enough young people left to take their place. For these people, change is seen as a threat to the identity of the island. They fear that if the younger generation leaves, and the island becomes more influenced by the outside world, Pitcairn will lose what makes it special. The challenge, then, is finding a way to blend the old and the new. How can the island's heritage be preserved while also allowing for growth and development for the younger generation? This can feel both comforting and confining. They love their island and its history, but they also want to experience more of what the world has to offer. It's a conflict that many people, not just on Pitcairn but around the world, face how to stay connected to the past while also moving forward into the future. The island has always been a place where tradition played a huge role in everyday life. But now, as time moves forward, the pressure to adapt and change is stronger than ever. While the reforms have brought some positive changes, the scars of the past remain. The young people of Pitcairn are facing a dilemma. How can they respect the island's traditions while also building a future that is connected to the larger world? Many young islanders are increasingly drawn to the idea of leaving Pitcairn and exploring opportunities elsewhere. The island's small population and limited resources make it difficult for the younger generation to find the kind of career or lifestyle they might be hoping for. Education and jobs are limited, and many feel the pull of the outside world, where they could have a wider range of opportunities. And the people of Pitcairn must continue to navigate their way. Through the aftermath of this shocking event, the international community was concerned about how the island would move forward and whether it could ever fully recover from the scandal. The abuse that occurred on the island had been swept under the rug for too long, and the trial revealed how difficult it was for the island's small population to address serious problems within their own community. The lack of an outside authority to intervene meant that for years, the victims of abuse had nowhere to turn. This realization was devastating for many on the island, as it made them question the very fabric of their society. For the first time, Pitcairn could no longer operate in isolation, free from external influence. The UK government insisted that stricter laws and regulations be put in place to prevent such abuses from happening again. The legal reforms that followed the scandal have made the island's governance more transparent and aligned it with international standards. However, the islanders are still grappling with the emotional and social repercussions of the abuse. Many people on Pitcairn feel ashamed of the past, while others are focused on moving forward and healing. The trauma of the scandal is not something that can be easily forgotten, but it has forced the islanders to face the realities of their society and make changes that will hopefully protect future generations. As a result, the island's legal system was restructured, and the leadership of Pitcairn was also recessed. Some members of the island's leadership were replaced, and new systems of governance were introduced. These changes were necessary to bring Pitcairn in line with modern legal and moral standards. This scandal forced Pitcairn to confront uncomfortable truths about its past and present. The scandal also had a lasting effect on the island's reputation. Despite the challenges, Pitcairn's residents have worked to rebuild their society in the aftermath of the trial. In conclusion, the 2004 sexual abuse scandal was a defining moment for Pitcairn Island. Pitcairn struggles with its own identity. Pitcairn Island is facing a struggle as it tries to balance its deep-rooted traditions with the demands of the modern world. This struggle is particularly noticeable among the younger generation. This desire for change is understandable. Growing up on Pitcairn Island means growing up in a very unique, isolated environment. At the same time, there are still many people on Pitcairn who are deeply committed to preserving the island's way of life. One of the biggest challenges Pitcairn faces is the shrinking population. This raises an important question. What happens when the last of Pitcairn's longtime residents are gone? Who will be left to keep the island's legacy alive? With fewer people choosing to stay, Pitcairn could become a place that is left behind, a place that is remembered in history but not in practice. The island's isolation, which was once its strength, may now be its biggest challenge. It's hard to see a future for Pitcairn without a strong, dedicated population to maintain the island's way of life. The future of Pitcairn Island is uncertain. This lifestyle, though simple, is incredibly demanding. Growing crops on the island is challenging due to the small amount of arable land and the island's isolated location. The islanders work hard to ensure that they can produce enough food to feed everyone. Any changes to the level of outside support or disruptions to the supply chain could have a serious impact on the community. The residents are self-sufficient, relying on their land and sea to provide for them. There's a strong sense of independence in community, with everyone working together to ensure that basic needs are met. But on the other hand, this isolation creates limitations. Without access to many of the goods and services that people in other parts of the world take for granted, life on Pitcairn can be frustrating. The islanders are constantly reminded of how far removed they are from the rest of the world. And when things break or run out, there's often little that can be done quickly. For example, if the British government were to reduce or stop providing subsidies, it could lead to significant hardships for the residents. Medical emergencies, too, can be difficult to manage. With no hospital on the island and limited medical supplies, residents must often rely on their own knowledge or seek assistance from outside doctors, which can be a long and complicated process. In addition, the island has no modern industries or businesses, which means there are very few job opportunities for the residents. For many, the only way to earn money is through the occasional sale of goods like crafts or produce, but this is not a reliable income source. The island's isolated location also makes it difficult to recover from any economic setbacks. Many of the younger generation are leaving the island to pursue education or better job opportunities elsewhere. With no jobs to offer, Pitcairn is losing its youth, and the island is slowly becoming older and more dependent on outside support. As the population continues to decline, it raises concerns about the future of the island's economy. Who will remain to keep the community running? And how will the island continue to survive if the younger generation is no longer willing to stay? Unlike larger communities with access to a wide range of resources, Pitcairn is limited in its options and must rely on what it can grow, make, or import. But there are times when the island is forced to rely on imported goods for things that cannot be grown locally. The lack of infrastructure makes it difficult to get supplies quickly or in large quantities, which means the islanders must carefully plan and budget their resources. Even basic items like clothing, building materials, and medical supplies are limited, and when they run out, it can take weeks or even months for new shipments to arrive. Some are hopeful that new generations will find a way to keep the island alive, either by attracting new residents or by finding ways to adapt its traditions to the modern world. It requires a long journey by boat or small plane, and only a handful of visitors make the trip each year. The island's isolation, while a defining feature, makes it a difficult destination for travelers. The island has no airports for commercial flights, and getting there requires specific arrangements, which can be costly and time-consuming. While some people do visit Pitcairn for its natural beauty and unique history, the island's lack of infrastructure and limited amenities mean that it is not a popular tourist spot. The few tourists who do visit bring in some income, but it's not nearly enough to support the entire population. Others fear that Pitcairn's unique way of life may soon be lost forever. The island faces a difficult decision about how to move forward, balancing the need for change with the desire to preserve its identity. As the world changes and the pressures of modern life continue to grow, the islanders of Pitcairn must find a way to navigate these challenges. They must decide whether they want to hold on to the old ways and continue living in the isolation that has defined their lives for so long, or whether they should embrace change and open the island to new ideas, new people, and new possibilities. The future of Pitcairn depends on the choices made by the island's residents today, and only time will tell how this small, isolated community will adapt to the demands of a rapidly changing world. Economic life on Pitcairn Island is far from easy. The island's economy is fragile and relies heavily on outside help. The British government provides subsidies to keep the island running, and there are occasional donations from people and organizations in other countries. While the island has a small amount of tourism, it is not enough to support the community in any meaningful way. With no modern industries, no large-scale businesses, and very limited resources, Pitcairn's economy is built on a mix of self-sufficiency and outside aid. The people of Pitcairn are accustomed to relying on fishing, farming, and basic crafts to survive. But this way of life is not enough to sustain the community without help from the outside world. The residents of Pitcairn grow their own food, raise animals, and fish in the surrounding waters. Tourism, which could potentially provide a source of income, is very limited. Getting to Pitcairn Island is no easy task. Because of the island's dependence on subsidies, donations, and the small amount of tourism, Pitcairn's economy is incredibly vulnerable. Pitcairn's isolated economy is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it offers a simple way of life. For example, when the island's only boat breaks down, it can be months before a replacement part or a new boat arrives. The lack of economic options on Pitcairn also contributes to the island's shrinking population. Pitcairn Island's economy is a complex mix of self-sufficiency, outside aid, and a limited tourism industry. While the residents manage to survive through fishing, farming, and relying on their tight-knit community, the island's economy is fragile. The lack of modern industries, limited resources, and dependence on outside support make it vulnerable to changes that could affect its survival. In a place as small and isolated as Pitcairn, where there are only 47 residents, Everyone knows everyone. This closeness creates bonds that go far beyond mere friendship. This connection brings a sense of belonging, and it creates a feeling of community that is rare in today's fast-paced, disconnected world. Everyone shares in the highs and lows of life on Pitcairn. Whether it's a celebration like a birthday or a wedding, or something more serious like a health crisis, the entire community comes together. There is no hiding from mistakes or bad choices. When you're surrounded by people who care about you, while privacy and personal space may be limited, the sense of connection and support is overwhelmingly positive. Life on Pitcairn is about working together, solving problems as a group, and taking care of each other. The Islanders' bonds are stronger than just friendship. They are based on shared history, mutual trust, and a deep understanding of one another's lives. The challenges that come with living in such close proximity to others are real, but the rewards are equally strong. The sense of community that defines life on Pitcairn Island is something that many people would envy, a place where everyone is like family, and where the connections between people are genuine and unbreakable. While this can lead to personal growth, it can also feel like a pressure to always act in accordance with the community's values and expectations. The bonds between the island's residents are what keep the island running and give it a unique sense of identity. But these close relationships also create challenges, especially when it comes to privacy and conflict resolution. Living in such a tight-knit environment forces people to confront their actions and face the consequences of their decisions in a very public way. For those who embrace this lifestyle, the rewards of community and connection are immense. But for others, the constant closeness can feel overwhelming. Either way, living on Pitcairn Island is a deeply personal experience that relies on the strength of its small, interconnected community. It's hard to avoid judgment when the people around you know everything about you. The island's small size means that everyone is connected, and each person's actions affect the group as a whole. This can create a feeling of accountability, but it can also lead to stress, as there's little room for individual mistakes to be forgotten or overlooked. There is something deeply comforting about living in an environment where you are truly known and understood by those around you. The island's isolation may keep it apart from the rest of the world, but it also strengthens the bonds between the people who call it home. On Pitcairn, the Islanders often treat each other like family, and in many ways, they are family. In such a small community, privacy becomes a rare commodity. There's nowhere to hide, and personal matters can quickly become public knowledge. When something happens, whether it's a disagreement, a mistake, or an accident, everyone knows about it. For some, this level of exposure can be uncomfortable, even overwhelming. There's no way to escape the watchful eyes of the community, and the constant scrutiny can feel like a burden for individuals who may want to keep certain things private. Living on Pitcairn can be challenging when you live so closely with others. The boundaries between personal life and public life often blur. The shared experiences of living on such a remote island, where survival depends on everyone working together, create an unspoken understanding between the residents and a larger community. Disagreements can sometimes be more easily ignored or brushed aside. But on Pitcairn, where everyone is so closely tied, conflicts are harder to avoid. A disagreement between two people can quickly escalate and affect the entire community. There's no room for privacy when tensions rise, and this can lead to situations where personal issues spill over into the public sphere. Because everyone knows each other, there's nowhere to escape from a conflict, and this can make resolving issues more difficult. The emotional stakes are higher when everyone is involved, and finding a way to move past a disagreement becomes more complicated. They help one another, rely on each other, and support each other in ways that are not always possible in larger, more anonymous societies. Life on Pitcairn is simple, but it is not without its struggles. As the island faces the pressures of a shrinking population and limited opportunities, it is uncertain what the future holds for its economy and the way of life that has lasted for generations. Pitcairn Island's unique sense of community. One of the most fascinating things about Pitcairn Island is the sense of community that runs deep throughout the island. Living in such a small community provides a strong sense of security. There's comfort in knowing that no matter what happens, you can count on your neighbors. When times are tough, or when there's a problem that needs solving, the islanders come together to find a solution. Everyone has a role to play, and no one is left behind. This tight-knit environment fosters trust, something that can be hard to find in big cities, where people often live alongside strangers. For the residents of Pitcairn, the relationships they form are essential to their daily lives. They rely on one another not only for practical support, but also for emotional well-being. The islanders of Pitcairn are not just neighbors, they are part of a family-like unit. However, this closeness comes with its own set of challenges. Conflicts, too, can be a problem in such a close-knit environment. Living in such a communal setting also forces individuals to face their own actions in a very public way. Despite these challenges, the residents of Pitcairn seem to embrace the unique lifestyle that living in such a small community brings. Pitcairn Island's sense of community is both a blessing and a challenge. Tourism on Pitcairn Island is not a typical tourist destination. It doesn't have the crowds of people or the luxury resorts that many popular travel spots offer. However, it still attracts a small group of visitors each year. The island's beauty, its remote location, and its fascinating history make it a unique place for those who seek adventure and a chance to experience something truly different. The island is a peaceful escape from the hustle and bustle of modern life. There are no busy streets, no shopping malls, and no crowded tourist attractions. Visitors can learn about the island's origins, which are tied to the famous mutiny on the HMS Bounty. They can hear stories from the residents, who are descendants of the original mutineers, and their Tahitian companions. This personal connection to history is something that you won't find in most tourist destinations. The island's beauty, its history, and its peaceful way of life attract a small group of visitors each year. However, its isolation and lack of modern amenities make it unsuitable for typical tourists seeking luxury or convenience. For those who are prepared for a simple and adventurous experience, Pitcairn offers a rare glimpse into a world far removed from the modern, fast-paced lifestyle most of us are used to. Pitcairn's small population also means that tourists have the rare opportunity to interact with the locals in a way that is impossible in more crowded places. The island's residents are friendly and welcoming, and visitors often get a chance to learn about their way of life and share in the island's traditions. Christianity, which was introduced by the mutineers who first settled on the island, still holds a central place in the community today. The island's religious practices and customs reflect Christian values and ideals, and religion is often seen as a guide for how people live their lives. For many of the residents, Christianity is not just something they believe in, it is a part of their identity and culture. It shapes their values, the way they interact with each other, and even how they deal with challenges that come with living in such an isolated place. Instead, Pitcairn offers a quiet, serene environment where visitors can experience life in its most natural and unhurried form. The surrounding waters are home to diverse marine life, and the island itself is covered in lush greenery, with trails that allow visitors to explore its natural beauty. The island's remote location and limited infrastructure mean that tourists must be willing to embrace simplicity and adapt to a slower pace of life. It is not the place for those seeking a traditional vacation with all the comforts and luxuries of a modern resort. Instead, it is a destination for those looking for a true adventure, one that involves connecting with nature, learning about an island's rich history, and experiencing a way of life that few people will ever know. Hiking, fishing, and simply enjoying the outdoors are some of the main attractions for tourists. However, visitors should be prepared for a rugged experience, as the island's terrain can be difficult to navigate, and the lack of modern conveniences means that they will need to be self-sufficient in many ways. The island is surrounded by beautiful, untouched landscapes, with stunning views of the ocean and lush greenery. For many visitors, this is a chance to disconnect from the fast pace of everyday life and enjoy a slower, simpler way of living. Pitcairn's tourism is not about mass crowds. Instead, it is about the few who are willing to make the long and costly journey to reach it. The island is not equipped with luxury hotels, fancy resorts, or high-end attractions. There are no theme parks or shopping districts, and the infrastructure is limited. The island's small population means that there are few amenities available for tourists. Visitors can expect to stay in simple accommodations, perhaps in local homes or guest houses, and will likely have to adjust to the island's basic lifestyle. There is no bustling nightlife or fancy restaurants. Instead, meals are often prepared from local ingredients, and the activities are centered around nature and community life. The trip to Pitcairn is no easy feat. The island is located far from most places, and getting there requires a long journey by sea or air. The only way to get to Pitcairn is through a small boat or plane, with most tourists traveling from nearby islands in the Pacific. This makes the journey not just time-consuming, but also expensive, which limits the number of people who visit each year. The island's isolation, which has helped protect its way of life, also serves as a barrier for potential tourists. While this isolation is part of what makes Pitcairn so special, it also means that only the most dedicated travelers make the effort to go there. For those who are brave enough to make the journey, Pitcairn offers an experience that few others will ever have. However, for those expecting a fully developed tourist experience, Pitcairn may fall short. What Pitcairn does offer, however, is a unique and intimate experience with the island's culture and history. For nature lovers, Pitcairn is an untouched paradise. The island's isolation has allowed it to remain free from many of the environmental pressures that affect other places, while Pitcairn offers an escape from the noise and chaos of modern life. It also requires a certain level of preparedness and flexibility from those who visit. While Pitcairn Island is not a mainstream tourist destination, it offers a one-of-a-kind experience for those who are willing to make the effort to visit. The role of religion on Pitcairn Island. Religion has played a huge role in the lives of Pitcairn Island's residents for centuries. When the Mutineers arrived on Pitcairn Island in 1790, they brought their Christian beliefs with them. Over time, religion became a strong influence on the island's way of life. It helps them navigate the challenges of island life and provides a shared belief system that connects them to one another. It serves as a community anchor, where the islanders come together to share their faith, support one another, and build strong relationships. The church offers a space where people can reflect, find comfort, and celebrate life's milestones. As new generations grow up and the influence of the outside world continues to reach the island, some of the traditional ways of life, including religious practices, may evolve. Even as the island changes, the traditions tied to Christianity are deeply rooted in the island's history, and for many, they provide a sense of continuity and stability. The church still offers the islanders a place to come together, to celebrate life, and to support each other in times of hardship. It remains a symbol of the island's identity, even as the future of religion on Pitcairn becomes uncertain. This shift could bring about changes in how religion is practiced on the island, and how central it remains to the community. The island's population has been steadily declining, and fewer young people are choosing to remain on the island. The decline in population, coupled with the difficulty of maintaining a self-sustaining community, means that Pitcairn may not be able to continue as it has in the past. The future of the island depends on the ability of its residents to adapt to the changing world, while still holding on to their unique traditions and history. It is unclear whether Pitcairn will be able to preserve its identity, or whether it will eventually become a forgotten chapter in history. This trend raises concerns about the future of Pitcairn and its ability to maintain its unique place in history. The island's isolation, while part of its charm, also makes it difficult to sustain itself. With few resources and limited opportunities for education or work, more and more of the younger generation are leaving to pursue better opportunities elsewhere. As the population shrinks and the community becomes older, there's a growing fear that the island's legacy may slowly fade away. Christianity, introduced by the Mutineers, continues to shape the values, practices, and customs of the island today. The church acts as a community anchor, offering a sense of purpose, belonging, and social support. However, as the island's population changes and the influence of the outside world increases, the role of religion may evolve. While the future of Christianity on Pitcairn is uncertain, it will likely remain an important part of the island's history and identity for many years to come. It's possible that future generations may continue to hold Christianity close, or they may develop their own ways of understanding faith and spirituality. Events like weddings, baptisms, and funerals are all celebrated at the church, and these occasions bring the community closer. The story of the mutiny, which took place in 1789, is famous, and Pitcairn is a living reminder of that dramatic event. The mutineers, fleeing from the British Navy, made their way to this remote island where they formed a small community. Over the years, Pitcairn has remained connected to this part of history and the islanders' legacy, as descendants of the mutineers, continues to be a central part of the island's identity. In many ways, Pitcairn has preserved a chapter of maritime history that might otherwise have been forgotten. In a place where isolation is a constant, the church provides a sense of belonging and connection. It's a place where people can find peace and reassurance, knowing that they are part of something larger than themselves. In a place where everyone knows each other, religion is a common thread that ties the community together. The younger generation, in particular, is beginning to question some of the old traditions and beliefs. As the world outside the island becomes more connected, there are more opportunities for the younger residents to explore new ideas and ways of life. Some young islanders may be less interested in religion or may seek different spiritual paths. As Pitcairn's population shrinks and its community evolves, it is uncertain how the role of religion will continue to play a part in the island's future. It provides the islanders with moral and ethical guidance, offering a framework for living that is built on Christian teachings. The values of love, kindness, forgiveness, and humility are deeply ingrained in the culture of Pitcairn, and these Christian ideals influence how people treat each other and resolve conflicts. The Bible, church services, and Christian traditions became an integral part of the community. Even though the islanders live in complete isolation from the rest of the world, Christianity has remained a source of guidance, comfort, and structure. The islanders often gather together for church services, and religious holidays and traditions are celebrated with a sense of unity and joy. For the people of Pitcairn, religion offers a sense of purpose and stability. The church on Pitcairn is not just a place where people gather to worship. It is also the center of the island's social life. However, as Pitcairn Island moves into the future, the role of religion in daily life may face some changes. Religion has been a powerful force on Pitcairn Island for hundreds of years. But like many small communities, Pitcairn is not immune to the changing attitudes of the world around it. At the same time, the church will likely remain an important part of Pitcairn's cultural fabric for the foreseeable future. In conclusion, religion has always played a significant role in the daily lives of the residents of Pitcairn Island. Pitcairn Island's legacy and what it means for the future. Pitcairn Island holds a special place in history as the last remaining settlement of the HMS Bounty mutineers. However, as the years go on, Pitcairn faces many challenges. Pitcairn's situation is becoming increasingly uncertain. The island has survived for over 2 centuries, but the challenges it faces today are unlike any it has encountered in the past. For Pitcairn, the idea of the end of an era feels very real. The island's self-sufficiency, which was once a point of pride, is now under strain. The lack of a police force, a shrinking population, and an economy that relies on external support make it harder for Pitcairn to continue as a thriving community. The younger generation, which once might have carried on the island's legacy, is now leaving for better opportunities. This trend threatens to end the island's way of life and leave Pitcairn without enough people to continue its traditions. The island's history as the last settlement of the HMS Bounty mutineers is a unique part of maritime history, and the islanders' way of life has been a testament to resilience and independence. As the number of residents continues to shrink and the island's isolation becomes harder to maintain, it's hard to say what lies ahead. However, one thing is clear: Pitcairn will always be a place that leaves a lasting impression on those who hear its story. From the dramatic mutiny of the HMS Bounty to its current struggles with population decline and limited resources, Pitcairn stands out as a place unlike any other. The island is more than just a small patch of land in the Pacific. It represents resilience, independence, and the complexities of human history. The people who live there, and the history they carry with them, are reminders of how a small community can survive against the odds. Pitcairn's past, with its connection to the Bounty Mutineers, gives it a unique place in history. But as the island faces the realities of modern life, it's unclear whether it can continue to thrive in the same way it has for centuries. Or do you think this island, with its troubled history, should remain a chapter in history books? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with us. Do you believe the future of Pitcairn is doomed? Or is the island simply misunderstood by the outside world? Share this video with anyone you think might be interested in this shocking story and its unique history. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on our latest travel documentaries. We promise you won't find places like Pitcairn anywhere else. It's a unique part of history, and it will continue to capture the imagination of those who learn about it. Whether it survives as a community or fades into the past, the island is at a crossroads, and the choices its residents make will determine its future. Whether it continues as a small, self-sustaining community or becomes a part of history, Pitcairn will always remain a place that is fascinating, mysterious, and unique. It has a world that still operates in ways that are very different from the modern societies most of us are familiar with. The island's past and present are a mix of fascinating history and unsettling truths, making Pitcairn an island unlike any other. It challenges our perceptions of what life can be like when isolated from the rest of the world, where laws are shaped by a small, close-knit community, and the choices made in the past continue to influence the present. There are few places in the world that can claim the kind of history and character that Pitcairn has. Whether it survives or fades, its legacy will continue to be a part of the world's story. As the population shrinks and the challenges of modern life become harder to overcome, the future of Pitcairn is in doubt. Or do you think it's better left as a fascinating chapter in history books? Would you want to experience life in such a unique, isolated place? Or would the challenges of living there be too much to handle? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Pitcairn may be a small island, but its story is big and thought-provoking. What do you think its future holds? The island's history is fascinating and deeply connected to its isolated nature. The island's population is shrinking, and fewer young people are choosing to stay. The challenges of maintaining a self-sustaining community are growing, and the island's isolation is no longer as appealing as it once was. There's no easy solution to the problems Pitcairn faces, and the island's future will depend on whether it can adapt to the changing world, or if it will continue to cling to the past. Will the island find a way to survive, or will it eventually fade away, leaving behind only the stories of its past? The descendants of the mutineers who settled there have carried on a way of life that has been largely untouched by the modern world. There's something special about a place that's remained so secluded, so different from the fast-paced life most of us know. For those who visit or learn about the island, Pitcairn is a reminder of a different way of life, one built on independence, survival, and strong community bonds. Even though the island is facing a future that is uncertain, its legacy will live on as an important part of world history. However, the island's story will continue to be told, and its legacy will remain an important part of the world's history. Many of the island's customs and practices are tied to its small, close-knit community, and without enough residents to keep those traditions alive, it's possible that the island's unique culture could be lost. Still, despite these challenges, Pitcairn Island has a legacy that is worth remembering. The story of the mutineers, their descendants, and the isolated way of life they created on the island is a remarkable one. Pitcairn may be facing an uncertain future, but its history is an important part of the world's maritime heritage. The island's isolation and unique history make it a symbol of resilience, of a small group of people who fought to create a life in the middle of the vast ocean. Whether or not the island can continue as a self-sustaining community, its story will likely continue to be told. The question, then, is whether Pitcairn will fade into history or find a way to adapt. As the population continues to shrink, it may become more difficult for the island to maintain its self-sufficiency and unique way of life. The island's history, its unique culture, and the stories of the mutineers and their descendants will continue to be a part of the world as collective memory. Even if Pitcairn cannot continue as it has in the past, its story will live on in books and documentaries, and in the hearts of those who appreciate the island's remarkable place in history. But the legacy of Pitcairn Island, the story of the Mutineers, the strength of its community, and its connection to history will likely remain. Whether the island's story continues through its people or through the memory of its past, it's clear that Pitcairn's place in history will never be forgotten. The future of Pitcairn is uncertain, but its legacy is undeniable. Pitcairn Island's future is uncertain, but its legacy remains strong. The unpredictable future of Pitcairn Island. The future of Pitcairn Island is uncertain. The island, with its tiny population and remote location, faces challenges that many other places don't. Despite the challenges it faces, Pitcairn has a certain charm that's hard to ignore. However, as Pitcairn moves forward, it's hard to ignore the reality of its situation. Despite the uncertainties, there is something deeply meaningful about Pitcairn's story. So, what's next for Pitcairn? Only time will tell. Now, we want to know what you think. Would you ever consider living on a place like Pitcairn Island with its complex history and tight-knit community? Pitcairn Island, with its unusual laws, shocking scandals, and extremely small population, is a place that forces us to rethink our ideas of justice, community, and isolation. So, what do you think? Would you visit Pitcairn? Would you ever consider living there, knowing the complexities of its past and present?